Big day yesterday. Had to hold it all in.
This is like your Super Bowl, Saagar.
This was a Super Bowl. We had the UFO hearings that happened on Congress. I was there live in person on Capitol Hill. It was absolutely electric energy. I talked to some of the press people who were involved. They said they had rarely seen so many people who were interested. There were hundreds of people lined up outside, many of them Breaking Points fans, so shout out to all of you who I got to talk to a little bit yesterday. I think we should take this opportunity to just go through some of the most important events that happened during the hearing. If you're interested, Jeremy Corbell and I did a live reaction right outside of the Capitol that I referenced earlier in our show that's available currently on our YouTube channel. But to me, this moment's going to stick out above everything. It's what all the news outlets picked up. Backstory, I was sitting at the press table with all the other reporters, and when Dave Grush said the words non-human biologics, there was an audible gasp, not only at the press table, but throughout the entire room. The energy was just absolutely insane. Here's the moment that I'm talking about. Let's take a listen.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
So that's probably the biggest thing that came out of that, Krystal, non-human biologics. Now, okay, let's try and steel man the case, because I think that's always fun. That could mean anything, right? That could mean a rat, that could mean a dog, but it was clearly implied in the way that Dave Grush stated that as the UFO whistleblower testifying under oath, under penalty of perjury, having represented all of this not only to News Nation, but also entering it into the congressional record and also going through the whistleblower process to say that we have recovered alien craft. He refuses to say the word alien, or extraterrestrial. He just says non-human origin. That these not only there not only was a crash retrieval program, but that, quote, biologics were recovered then at the time. I mean, that's just one of the most stunning things that you really could say under oath before Congress in the UFO context. Obviously, it's salacious. It has a little bit of the giggle factor. It has a little bit of the movie factor and seems so unbelievable. And of course, extraordinary claims do also require extraordinary evidence. But I'm curious what you made of that, or if you have any questions or anything.
I mean, it was just wild to watch members of Congress seriously asking these questions. I mean, that was wild to see. It is a remarkable development that this is being treated with the gravity that it is at this point. And I think, obviously, the turning point was when some of these videos were released and it just became undeniable. And Congress has clearly become increasingly frustrated at the stonewalling that they feel like they are getting. I mean, one question I have for you, Saagar, maybe you can just set the context for people is, he's making lots of allegations. He wasn't directly involved in the program. Right. This is based on what he's been told from people that are involved in the program. Well, why weren't any of those people required to testify to be there so that we could have something more direct than secondhand testimony?
Excellent question. Unfortunately, there's a full-blown cover-up going on. So effectively, Dave Grush, as I said, he will go to jail if he violates the terms of his disclosure agreements with the Department of Defense, where he is going through the formal whistleblower process. So he will be prosecuted if he reveals any classified information. So they repeatedly were asking him exactly what you said. They're like, look, who are these people? And he said, I cannot give you those names in an unclassified setting. And so they said, oh, so you could give this to us in a classified setting. He said, I would be happy to give you the names, the specific names of both hostile and non-hostile direct reports. I can give you the exact locations of crashed UFOs, where these programs are happening, the people involved, the dates, when things were moved, etc. But I can only do that inside of a secure, compartmentalized facility called a SCIF. There are several SCIFs inside of Congress. Congressman Tim Burchett, who I actually personally spoke to before the hearing, as well as other members, Matt Gaetz, Anna Paulina Luna, and Jared Moskowitz, who is a Democrat, let's be clear here, so this is a bipartisan thing, that were denied access to the SCIFs inside of Congress to be able to debrief Dave Grush and to be provided these unclassified names. Grush repeatedly said under oath, I And he's like, I am dying. I would love to give you all this information, the names of the people to be called. He is literally unable to give them those names outside of an actual interview inside of a skiff. And those members of Congress who are actually pushing on this issue have been denied skiff access. So I think it's very important for me to explain that there is a lot more, everyone's like, okay, well, where is it? I'm like, well, he will literally break the law. And as we all know, like, they are dying to throw him in jail. They want to shut this man up. They keep calling him a liar, and I will get to that in terms of this statement that was released here. Another of the absolutely extraordinary allegations that was made was under questioning from the congressman from Missouri about whether any U.S. personnel had been physically injured while handling a crashed UFO. Here's what Dave Grush had to say.
At one point, you had said that there has been harmful activity or aggressive activity. Has any of the activity been aggressive, been hostile in your reports?
I know of multiple colleagues of mine that got physically injured. And the activity, and I got
by UAPs or by people within the federal government?
both.
Okay, so there has been activity by alien or non-human technology and or beings that has caused harm to humans.
I can't get into the specifics in an open environment, but at least the activity that I personally witnessed, and I have to be very careful here because they tell you never to acknowledge tradecraft, right? So what I personally witnessed myself and my wife was very disturbing.
Very disturbing. I mean, I understand why people are skeptical. I get it. They're like, everyone talks big game. Where's the evidence here? He's made clear he can't actually talk about this in an unclassified setting. I thought it's still extraordinary to get him on the record, under oath, and listen, I mean, I think it's also important for me to say, if this man is lying, no one is going to be more upset than me, because he wasted a lot of my time. He wasted your guys' money, people who pay our bills, for me going down there and for getting a camera crew, for investing so much airtime and discussion to all of this. But he ticks enough boxes for us to consider, at least me, to consider this credible enough. And not just me. I mean, this is the freaking House Oversight Committee here.
Right.
Testifying under oath, bringing these guys in a setting where he could be able to actually face questions. I mean, he faced some hostile questions, actually, from a few people. And he also revealed something pretty interesting about the actual timeline. Now, remember, UFO lore really begins, at least in the American context, Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. But Grush actually told us that things predate Roswell by a pretty significant portion, all the way to the 1930s. Let's take a listen to what he said there.
Has the U.S. government become aware of actual evidence of extraterrestrial, otherwise unexplained forms of intelligence? And if so, when do you think this first occurred?
I like to use the term non-human. I don't like to denote origin. Keeps the aperture open, both scientifically. Certainly, like I've discussed publicly previously, 1930s.
Previously 1930s. So there you go. That is, there's actually some extraordinary backstory. You and I were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I start to go like, I'm definitely going to need some more evidence because we're talking about cover up with the Vatican and Mussolini going back to the 1930s. I mean, there's just, listen, it's a lot to swallow. That's the bottom line. It's a lot to swallow. You're talking about U.S. personnel who are being injured by aliens and non-human biologics and cover-ups going back to the 1930s. And we don't have more than like a few grainy images. We don't have more than someone who, secondhand might have heard something but can't say exactly what it is in a public setting, which on the one hand, you're like cover-up. On the other hand, you're like, that's also very convenient. So I'm just going to need more, Saagar.
Yeah,
Hopefully this is step one. We'll just say that.
I think it's the beginning of something. And I again want to say, I want these people, if they're lying, I want it to be speedily proved, to come out and just be like, this is BS. Everything that this man is saying is a lie. If he did lie, I want him to be prosecuted, again, for wasting my time, for wasting the entire community's time, for misleading people down this wild goose chase. I mean, that's, not only immoral, but illegal now that he's actually testified under oath and gone through the DOD process. So listen, I mean, we don't know fully yet whether everything he said or not. We know that there's some breadcrumbs that have been scattered in terms of where, if they're eventually given skiff access by these members of Congress. And I got to give these people a lot of credit. You can say a lot about Matt Gaetz, but he does seem genuinely very interested in this topic. And part of the reason why, Krystal, is he shared a personal anecdote about how there was a UFO encounter at Elgin Air Force Base, of which one of his constituents contacted him and was like, man, this is one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. My radar went down, my FLIR systems went down, I was able to snap a manual photo. He showed Gaetz the photo in the classified setting. The DOD won't allow him to release the photo. And he's like, I'm sitting there trying to get access to a military base as a member of Congress with top secret clearance. He even served on the House Intelligence Committee. And the freaking United States military is telling me, a congressman, basically screw off. We're not giving you any access. He's like, that's an extraordinary situation for me to be in. You know, and these are these constituents come to me in good faith because the pilot, this was a test pilot actually who encountered this, told Gaetz, the best thing you can do for your career is shut up and forget that this ever happened. Because when you start reporting this stuff up the chain, they're like, hey, we're not dealing with this, because they don't want to, they don't want records. Yeah. You got no records, you got nothing to turn over to Congress.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it on the one hand, I'm like, this is a lot for me to swallow, as I just said. On the other hand, I'm like, but then I see the photos and the videos, and I'm like, they don't have another explanation for it. So give us some kind of explanation for what's going on that passes the sniff test, and, perhaps we can move on.
This comes through also with Commander David Fravor's testimony. I thought it was so important. David Fravor is the only reason that I'm interested in UFOs. I thought it was BS, frankly. I read the 2017 article, and I was like, yeah, maybe. Then I heard Fravor, and I was like, man, this guy is unimpeachable. I mean, this is like I've said this before, he was a commanding officer, led people into battle, on an aircraft carrier, has a verified UFO incident. I mean, he himself called it the most credible UFO sighting in history. He said multiple times at the hearing, he said, I'm not a UFO guy. This, by the way, is not even, the craziest things that ever happened in my life. I never wanted to be involved in this. I never wanted to come forward. I'm only doing so because I believe that what I saw that day did not come from human technology. I mean, he repeatedly referenced that a human being who was inside the craft that he saw with his own eyes would have died from the G-forces that were inflicted and upon the way that it moved. And David Fravor, again, a multi-year, pilot in charge of hundreds of millions of dollars of aircraft, said on a number of bases, who's also involved, I believe, in the field, at this moment, is like, look, from a material science perspective, this does not exist. And not only now, it doesn't exist 100 years from now. It doesn't exist 200 years from now in terms of human capabilities. And then when you combine that with what Dave Grush said in many cases, that many of these UFO crash retrieval programs predate, our own ability to fly at supersonic speed. I mean, we didn't even break the sound barrier. I believe Chuck Yeager did it in 1950, something like that. So, fair post Roswell at the very least. Some people say that's connected. Anyway, I think it's important. And I just want to end actually with the statement, though, that the Pentagon, to be clear, is still saying that he's lying. So guys, C5, please. Let's put this up there on the screen. This was the full readout from Susan Go, who works at the Pentagon, who gave this statement on the testimony. She says, to date, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office has not discovered any verifiable information to substantiate claims that any programs regarding the possession of reverse engineering of extraterrestrials may have existed in the past or exist currently. So again, this is actually very clear. The Pentagon says he's lying. Dave Grush says the Pentagon is lying. Let's see. If you can prove vice versa, one of those people lied to Congress, they need to go to jail for what they did. And I actually love that it's so binary here, because eventually you can prove whether one or two of those people, or whether one of these individuals is telling the truth or not. They've both done now so in an open setting. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, either this is a colossal, not only just psyop, but stage and all this. I mean, to have this man who literally worked in the intelligence community come forward as a decorated combat veteran, served in Afghanistan, Air Force cadet, so much of his military service he referenced in his testimony. They're like, why are you doing this? And he said, it's because, he's like, I took an oath, 18 years ago when I became an Air Force cadet. I followed that oath. I believe that there was a cover-up going on. I'll just end on this note. He says that he's been doing this at tremendous risk to his own life, fear of reprisal. Here's what he had to say.
It was very brutal and very unfortunate, some of the tactics they used to hurt me both professionally and personally, to be quite frank. Yeah.
It's very unfortunate. As they say, when you're over the target, that's when they do the most firing at you. Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would think, that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
In the last couple of years, have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
So you can take that for any way that you want. I choose to take it actually pretty seriously.
If it's real, it's the biggest story in the world. So keep pushing, guys.
Can't stop.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.